Welcome to Typecasting.
Pop culture by the numbers. That is your host, Lucas Graydon. And honestly, Lucas, I love you, but you are one of the last people I would want to take on a heist.
I appreciate your honesty. And that's your co-host, Murjanatu, who, I don't know if you remember this, but went with me to the Ant-Man and the Wasp premiere, and I got the souvenir cups with little figurines of Wasp on top, and I still have it.
Okay, actually, listeners, I did not go with you because I went to it in New Orleans because I was interning that summer, but you gave me one because we couldn't go together.
Oh my gosh, okay, I knew there was something. Yes, I do kind of remember
my birthday present up in the,
in the cup,
container,
right? Like with the
and
lid?
I eat it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I eat out of the popcorn now when we have our movie nights.
Oh, yes.
But I wasn't with you. So
well,
you're just so
these
sweet
characters
that you
do always make me think of you.
I do love
Because
them, and
of
we'll touch on that later, too. Okay,
Oh,
cool.
okay.
Okay. Well, here on Typecasting, two Enneagram 4s, our favorite, are having a spoiler-filled discussion of the best fictional characters and discovering where they fall on the Enneagram of personality.
There are a few ground rules here at Typecasting, so before we get started, let's review.
Rule number 1. Every type is beautiful.
Rule number 2. The Enneagram is a tool, it is not a box.
It is not a box. Rule number 3. We only type fictional characters. You are always the authority on your own type.
Number 4, our favorite, we are not experts. Okay, I'm so excited to get into this. Murjanatu, I just mentioned this briefly before we got started, but this, I think, was the easiest group of characters I have had to type yet. So I'm very excited to see if we disagree. I was preparing all my notes and I was like, is this going to be a really short episode? Like, are we just going to be like, oh, so-and-so's this number, yep, and then move on? So I'm excited to see what happens.
That is so funny because I actually was like, he's going to fight me on this one, and I'm not really sure about this one, and I think we're going to be aligned on this one, but maybe I'm thinking about it in the wrong way. So I'm like interested to see.
Okay. So up first is Scott Lang / Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, the Fountain of Youth himself.
Mm-hmm.
And a quick fun fact before we get started is that according to Andy Park, in the early stages of Captain America Civil War, Scott was actually going to be on Iron Man's side originally, like Hank Pym was in the original comics, but they changed it later on, which I'm kind of glad because I love his little exchange with Wasp in Ant-Man and the Wasp when he's like, oh, Cap, and she's like, Cap?
Sorry about Germany. They just showed up. They said that it was a matter of national security, that Cap needed help.
Cap?
Captain America. Captain Cap. It's what we call him. If you're a friend. I'm not saying I'm a friend. A little. I know him. He's not. Whatever.
He's like, yeah, that's like, Tin America. That's what we call him.
I have a nickname for Captain
I know
America.
him. Like,
and she's like, what? You think you're way cooler than you are. And he just fangirls over Captain America so much more than I think he would for Iron Man, for Tony. Like, and it's so cute.
I will say, I just got emotional already thinking about Endgame. Endgame will always make me feel emotional without fail. But thinking about when he and Hope are working together and she says, you got it, Cap, and like looks up and they have that little look. Oh,
Scott, how long you need to get that thing working?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Get it started. We'll get the stones to you.
We're on it, Cap.
It's a very beautiful, like, I don't know what that's called.
Like a callback?
Circle.
Yes.
Yeah, callback. Circle. I love that. I love that. And honestly, I wouldn't have noticed it unless you brought it up before we went to go see Endgame, just randomly. And you were like, I just saw this cute little, like, line thing, and I just love their relationship. And then, like, it happened to have that callback in Endgame, like, when we went to see it a couple hours later. Love it. Love it. All right. Are you ready to... Do you want to go first, or shall I?
I want to hear what you have to say, because like I said, I'm feeling pretty confident about all of these, so I want to kind of follow your lead and see where you're at.
Okay, I thought you were going to be really pleased, because I actually think he might be a 6. Oh no!
Oh
I
my
was
God.
wrong. I was thinking he was a 7, but I was like, I want to give Lucas this as a little treat. I'll let him be a 6. Am I so... Oh no!
This episode is already so much different than I thought it was going to be.
Okay, well, let me
I can't wait.
defend
Yes,
myself.
please go ahead.
So we see 2 very different types of Scott Lang. So, and this is part of the reason why I felt a little confused. On one side, when he's like with the Avengers, and when he's with Hank, he's very silly, very childlike. But then, when he's with his good old pals at XCon, he's actually the serious friend and always planning for all the things that could go wrong. He's really hesitant to jump into something. And I think that he's like a really good go along for the ride, and also like so sweet to his friends and family. Like I can see that loyalty, like how they have that co-parenting with his ex-wife, and he'll do anything for Cassie. And I mean, like that's his kid, so I'm not saying like he's loyal to her for different reasons, but I could really see some of the loyalty come through. But then like how he just kind of like goes to Berlin, is in the back of a van and like falling asleep, and like he's definitely like has that 7, that childlike feature.
Jeez. Look, I want to say, I know you know a lot of super people, so thanks for thanking of me.
And he's like so willing to help Cap, and he's like really unsure honestly of what's going on, and he's like can't wait to fight bad guys, but like then he's like, wait, the bad guys are Cap or Iron Man and Co. Like I'm a little confused, but he's just like so adorable. And also like he's kind of willing to try anything, but I think he thinks through all of the like things that can go wrong and will go right, because he is like an engineer. So I don't know, I kind of was gonna give him a 6.7, but honestly like you can convince me of otherwise. But I'm glad this is not gonna be a 10-minute episode.
No, it is not at all. Okay, no, I like the argument. I can see it. And actually I was rewatching some of Ant-Man and some of Ant-Man and the Wasp before we started this episode. And he does, at the very beginning of Ant-Man and the Wasp, have that conversation with Luis where Luis is like, are you sure we need all these security cameras? And he's like, no, I know what we need. Like, they need all of these security cameras. And I can see what you're saying about, like, being the one who, like, is preparing and is kind of really good at analyzing those security threats and things like that. My first, and this is just a quick counter, and then I'll get more into my where I think he is. But I will say, and this kind of reminds me of our conversation about Nick Fury, where you were like, he's a spy. It's his job to be skeptical. Like, I do think for Scott, that's like his talent. Like, that is his expertise, is like being a criminal. And he finds a way to kind of channel that energy into like a positive endeavor. But to me, I see that more as like a demonstration of his professional competencies than I do maybe like the core of his character. But I totally see where you got that.
Well, it's hard, like chicken egg.
Exactly. Yes, very much like where does it start and end and things like that. So I think that's valid. I'm here for the reading. I will say though, as soon as I was like, Scott, he right away, if I would rank the difficulty that I had in typing these characters, Hope was like the easiest one. Scott was right after her though. I was like, he is such a 2. He wears his heart on his sleeve. And I think I see a lot of similarities in what you recognized as the 6. And you talked about it, and we've talked about it before, like the 6's ability to maintain those really beautiful, loving friendships and loyalties. And I see that also as a beautiful expression of the 2, and his just love and care for the people in his life, for Cassie, and even like his relationship with Luis. And also, I'm not sure that a 6 would be as willing to go break the Sokovia Accords and just like run across international borders and like blow up an airport. Just because I think 6s a lot of times do defer to authority and do really find security and solace in authority and in kind of like following the rules. But a 2, you ask a 2 to come with you to Germany, even though you've never actually met before, and they will be there before you hang up the phone. And I like I see him as such an empathetic and nurturing person, almost, and I was thinking about this, like almost maternal. And I think that that's totally valid of his role as he parents Cassie, is like, he is just always there for her in a way that like reads as a very like too like others focused way. And I think about him like, I don't think he ever wants to hurt anybody in his life. Like, he literally doesn't want to hurt a fly because he can shrink down to the size of a fly. But, like, I just see some really beautiful things of the two in him. And I think he has that wing 3 where he has that kind of versatility. He can live it up and be the life of the party, kind of have that fun, maybe where you were seeing that wing 7. But for me, I was right away, I was like, oh yeah, Scott is such a 2 wing 3. He just... and I think for me, it's just, he just feels like this person walking around with an open heart. And so that was where I got the 2 from.
I can see it. What do you think about the 7?
I actually, and you know what? Honestly, the 7 was not even on my radar, but as you say that, I could definitely make an argument for, or see an argument for the type 7. I think that's valid too. Do you want to dig into that a little bit more? That's interesting.
Yes. Okay. So I think when you said like, we'll drop everything, go to Germany, I was like, ARC-2s would do that for someone they love. I don't know if they'll just do that. It's not necessarily like a 2 factor, right? It's that they would just like do whatever they want. However, it is a 7 factor. That they were like, oh, I'm down for the party. I'm down to do things. And I think like part of it is how he got into the situation of being the Ant-Man in the first place. Like, just like this enthusiasm for life. And like, I think about what a good dad he is to Cassie, and like how he makes these crazy imaginative places for her to live and be in. Because he loves her. And I mean, but it's like more so that he's like creating this world. And I don't have evidence of this off the top of my head, but I feel like he doesn't sit in sadness very well. I think to Endgame and just like, here's some things happening. This is the worst thing. Half of my city, half the people I love are gone. And like, thankfully he has Cassie and he finds her. But then, immediately he's like, okay, I'm going to drive across the country and I'm going to figure it out. And I think a 2 might just like sit there with his daughter and, try to be thankful and, try and figure it out. But I think like leaving Cassie to go fix the world, very noble of him. And also just like, okay, this is the next thing. Like, let's go. It's very
I kind of see that drive to be like, I need to go find the Avengers as that expression of him needing to help. Like, he can't, I think, just sit by and be like, okay, I'm good. I've got my person. And I'm going to like let the rest of the world figure it out. Like, I need to help. I need to be out there doing what I can to help. And so I do see some of that too in that. I see the argument for the 7. But actually what I was thinking about, I don't know. And maybe this is for the 7. I'm kind of like processing as I talk, but I don't know that he wants the flightiness that 7s often have. Like, I think with Cassie, like, all he wants is to be able to like provide this like stable home for her and show his ex-wife and show social services and things like that he can provide like stability for Cassie. And obviously he has that beautiful imagination, and I think that that's a really great point in favor of the type 7. But I think he really wants to lay down roots for Cassie in a way that like a 7 might be kind of like flighty and all over the place. But as I was saying, that may actually be a point in the favor of the 7 because that's a struggle that he does face. And that is a kind of constant thing that he's battling.
Exactly. I was going to say, he has that as a struggle. So I feel like I hear what you're saying, but I'm like, well, but the fact of the matter is, like, the plot started before the movie where he, like, could not stay still and, like, get there in time to show that he has stability for Cassie.
I'm thinking, though, too, as you just said, like, before the start of the movie, and it made me think back to where he starts, and he's in jail, finishing his sentence, and he's in jail because he robbed a company that was doing the wrong thing. He was doing it as a way to pay back the people that had been wronged by this company. Like, I think he has a sense of having to do the right thing. His actions may sometimes be not the smartest, but I think they are always super well intentioned and super goal oriented about doing the right thing and helping people, like going to find the Avengers, like robbing a company, being the kind of Robin Hood who's like, these people in power are doing the wrong thing and I'm have the skill set to fix this and I'm going to help these people. I don't know them personally, but like I need to help them. And I see him like, I think that's where I also see some of that too. And I think, was it when we were talking back about Heimdall and you talked about the Millenniagram calls the 2-wing 3 the advocate, and in his need to kind of serve justice in that way, I can see him as this kind of advocate, and not maybe on the front lines with a speaker or things like that, but like working in the things that he knows well, which is crime, to kind of be that Robin Hood figure and to help people. And so I do see some of that too still. I'm torn. I am. Because I can see the 7 too.
I'm trying to think of examples from Ant-Man and the Wasp and his relationship with Ghost and like trying to figure that out. I don't necessarily see his inclination being towards empathy, whether it's towards Bill Foster or Ghost herself. I think they eventually figure that out, and I think that something's off. But and honestly, I don't even necessarily see that with Hope. Like, I don't think his natural inclination is necessarily empathy. I think it's he wants to impress, and he's kind of silly. I just see 7 so much more strongly than I see the 2. Like, yeah, I don't necessarily think. I just like, I think that he loves his daughter, but I don't even really see him display that in other areas of his life of wanting to be the helper. You know, like he kind of receives.
Yes. I guess I'm thinking, because Ant-Man and the Wasp is maybe a good example of like all those 20 different things going on at once in his life. Mm-hmm. But I think that he has this sense of responsibility that he wants to help everyone. Like he wants to be there for XCon because they have their big pitch, and he wants to help Hope and Hank reunite with Janet, and he wants to finish his sentence of house arrest so that he can be there for Cassie. And so I think he has almost a sense of like personal responsibility that I see more in the 2 than I see in the 7, but I feel I think evenly split on this. I think you're leaning more towards the 7. I do. And maybe this is also, maybe the reason I see him as a 2 so clearly is because I was thinking about him in the context of Hope and Hank, neither of which I think are very kind of emotions forward people. And so compared out of the 3 of them, he's definitely, I think, the most empathetic. I think that's an easy thing to say. But maybe, as you said, you're thinking about him in Civil War and these places where he's existing alongside more characters. And so maybe that's why I see him as more empathetic, because I'm just very much in that like 3-person mindset. But as you're thinking about like a more holistic view.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think he's like, I think he likes them, but I don't necessarily think he like loves them. And the other thing I will say is I would be curious to hear your argument, because like I made a pretty clear argument for the 6, right? Like I think it's just part of him naturally, like what's worst case scenario? How do I get myself out of this? And how can I get myself into this? And I can see the 7 wing 6 where I don't necessarily see him as a wing 3, and I definitely don't see him as a wing 1.
I definitely don't see him as a wing 1. And I'm thinking too, and this was actually something that struck me as I was watching the Ant-Man movies, is that like they are very much Scott's films. Hank and Hope are present and are kind of the 2nd and 3rd main characters, but he is very much the lead. And in turn, both of those films are very funny. Like they are comedies. They are goofball movies. And so I could see that that's kind of his natural personality, like bleeding into that too. Like he's definitely a goofball. I'm not sure that I see the wing 6, which feels so weird to say. And as I was talking about like his like need and like always driving to like do the right thing and like that drive for justice, like I do wonder if he has that wing 8 to be like, yeah, I'm going to commit a felony. I'm going to rob this like massive corporation blind because it's the right thing to do. And because I'm having fun doing it. But he's not just like a petty criminal. He's not just like out there getting money for his own sake. I think he is and then in the future, he's putting his skills towards helping other people. So I think I could actually see the 7 wing 8, which is interesting. And I would have to double check this, but I think that Thor might be a 7-wing 8. And I see them as very different characters.
Whoa.
But I do think that I could see Scott as a 7-wing 8 too.
Mm-hmm. I think I will go with that, and I think that's your inclination towards wanting to help and fight for the best things.
Right.
I think that's where it is more than the two, personally.
And I see what you're saying about how, like, he doesn't have a ton of, like, he doesn't have a ton of clear love for Hank and Hope. They have a more strained relationship than that, and he doesn't have maybe like a super empathetic and emotional relationship with Luis. Like, they're more just like buddies, you know? Where I could see maybe that drawing away from an image of a 2 and more towards that 7 who, like, has a bunch of people in their circle and they're always the life of the party, but maybe not, like, developing those relationships as much.
Exactly. And I don't think I think even when he's at Avengers campus, like, he's not really developing these deep relationships. Right? He's like he's like trying to figure out what's going on. He's like having a good time. He's talking where he can, but like it's his main focus isn't there to uplift or to be with other people. So I feel really good about the 7-wing 8.
I do too. Wow.
Oh wow! You thought it was gonna be easy.
I did. This went in a whole different direction, but I love it. I love it. Okay. So I'm so excited to hear who's next.
All right. Well, the Wasp, aka Hope Pym. So we have a couple fun facts, but I think one of my favorites is when I first dove into the Avengers, my brothers and I would love this show. And I honestly don't know what it's called. It was just like on, honestly, I think Cartoon Network, which I don't know how the properties worked back then, but I loved the Wasp. Like, I was obsessed with her, like, for a while, and whenever my brothers and I would play superheroes, I was the Wasp, and I could turn small, and I would have electrocution powers, and I, like, remember wearing, like, my yellow dress all the time because I wanted to be the Wasp. And she had these, like, super cool goggles, and I, like, loved her on this, like, random cartoon show. So, just so everyone knows, I love her.
I love that. And the Wasp, like, the Janet version, like Janet and Hank as, like, Ant-Man and the Wasp, they were, like, original Avengers. Like, they've been OGs. So the Wasp is, like, a huge character in the Marvel, like, comics universe. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, even in, like, if you just watch the cartoons, I mean, like, those are, like, Ant-Man's the leader a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny because I think that when Ant-Man came out, a lot of people were like, what? And, like, thought it was going to be a joke. And I was like, no, Ant-Man's, like, a huge deal, guys. Like, what are you talking about? I love Ant-Man.
I know. I feel like these movies get a bad rap, but they're great.
I mean, I think they get, like, a weird rap, I will say. Because I think people love them, but, like, as comedy, where the other ones are more, like,
that's fair.
You know, yes. So, a fun fact that I found out today while researching for this episode is before Evangeline Lilly was cast as Hope Van Dyne, Rashida Jones was considered, and so was Emma Stone, which is, like, super cool. Jessica Chastain, who I honestly kind of think of, like, kind of looks like Evangeline Lilly.
Yes, I can see the resemblance.
I feel like they, like, so she turned it down due to scheduling conflicts, but she was, like, the most seriously considered. And honestly, part of me is like, were they, like, considering Jessica Chastain and they, like, couldn't get her out of her head, so they, like, talked to Evangeline Lilly?
I remember being so excited for Evangeline Lilly, though, because I'm a huge Lost fan, and I feel like and I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, but I know that Evangeline Lilly was in the Hobbit movies, but beyond that, I hadn't seen a ton of her work since Lost, so I was very excited to have her join the Marvel movies.
Well, Lucas, do you remember? So Lucas and I, when we became best friends his freshman year of college, like, that was one of the first things where I was like, we talked about Lost, and we talked for, like, an hour and a half at the cafeteria.
Yes.
About, like,
yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, like, because I had decided Lucas was going to be my best friend upon, like, hearing his voice. But that was, like, first I was like, oh, yeah, I had a good pick.
Yeah, you're like, okay, good. I didn't make a mistake. Like,
because I already committed.
Yes.
So we've been with Evangeline Lilly, and I feel like we've been Evangeline Lilly fans for so long, and I'm so glad that she has this little crossover into MCU. Not little, it's pretty big.
Yeah, I know. And she still has some more movies to go. So I'm going to kick us off because, as I said earlier, Hope was the easiest one for me to nail down, like, right off the bat. I think that Hope is a 1. I think she is textbook perfectionist, textbook reformer. She, I think, has a lot of pain in her childhood. And I think we do get to really dig into her family throughout these movies, about the loss of her mother and then her father really withdrawing. And I think we really see herself driven to be the best that she can possibly be. I think partially because she was sent away and she didn't have anything else to do. And so by the time we see her in the beginning of Ant-Man, she has worked her way to the top of the board of directors at Cross Technologies, which was Pym Technologies. I think we see that really broken relationship with her and her father, which is really interesting. She's even got that, like, I'm a no nonsense, I'm a serious woman haircut in the first movie that I think is a little questionable.
That was so like 2017. Remember, like, Jurassic World too? I was like, what are we doing?
Yes. Speaking of, was that Jessica Chastain? No, that was Bryce Dallas Howard. They look exactly alike. That's a whole other set of lookalikes.
And that haircut, though.
I think that even in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Louise, like, makes a comment about her haircut and about how she's all serious and businessy.
So anyway, this guy gets out of jail and he starts working for Hank. That's when he met Hope. And Hope's all like, I want nothing to do with you. Look at my hairdo. I'm all business.
And I do think, and I was thinking back to another female one that we've discussed before, Miss Pepper Potts, and I think that these two are cut from the same cloth. Although I do think that Pepper is in a little bit healthier of a place when we see her. I think that we see Hope go through a little bit more of a journey of healing, where at the beginning she, I think, has some of the edge and the bite of a 1. Ones can sometimes come across as judgmental, and that's because of their gift to see everything for the way that it can be and for its fullest potential. And I think that she definitely looks at Scott and is like, I'm better than you. I should be the one in the suit. I have spent my whole life becoming the perfect candidate for this, and my stupid dad won't let me, but I deserve this. I'm the best for this job. And she legitimately is, because she's put that work in. And I think that she has a lot of the strengths of a type 1. And as soon as she does get to see the Wasp suit at the end of the movie, and she says,
it's about damn time,
because she knows that her time has come, I think that we see her then in the next movie, and she is a way better fighter than Scott will ever be. I love when she punches him in the face when they're training. I think that she has a lot of that grit, that resolve, that determination, and that need to prove herself that I think is really indicative of a type 1. And I think that she is a textbook type 1. So I have a feeling you disagree with me, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, I don't necessarily disagree. I think it's just a conundrum. Because I think you make a convincing argument, but I thought of 3, and you didn't, like, not convince me she was a 3. You almost, like, more convinced me she was a 3 than a 1.
Yes.
And I think that, like, I would say she is so driven, and she's underestimated, and she continues to prove herself again and again, and still doesn't have that recognition, but does not give up. I don't see a lot of that inner critic that a 1 typically has. And so that was kind of where I was like, like, I think that she knows she's great, and she is has the ability to speak about it. And that's one thing that 1s, as perfectionists, tend to actually be a lot more nitpicky towards themselves than a 3. 3s tend to be a little more confident and, like, dare I say, cocky. I do not think that she's cocky. I think she deserves everything that she has received, but I do think she might be painted that way specifically by her father. And I think that's his excuse for not giving it to her, even though it's just he's scared she won't. Something will happen. So, yes. The interesting thing is, like, I'm not against the 1, but I came in thinking 3, and I feel like you convinced me 3 when you just said all of those things.
Okay, that's fair. And for me, I will say, I think that 1s and 3s can come across very similarly. I can totally see how that argument, like, also applies to the 3. For me, it is the, like, inner motivation, and I think that she has that need to prove herself and that need to be perfect because I think she never really felt close to her father, especially after her mother passed away. I think she grew up in a lot of isolation emotionally and has found that the only way that she can kind of cure that feeling is to be the best, is to be perfect, to follow the rules. She, I think you're right, has always been undervalued. And I also think underestimated in a way that maybe like a 3 would like push their way to the front of the stage, whereas she is like, no, I'm gonna do this the right way. I deserve this. I have been working for this. And I think that she does have that inner critic, and I think that inner critic is tied really directly into kind of the loss of her mother and some of that pain that she has, where she is constantly, I think, working extra hard to be the best, because in the back of her mind, she is like, stand up straighter. Like she is like, keep fighting. Like, you are waking up at 5 a.m. this morning and you are going to do your training. You are going to like keep putting this work in, even though, and I think that we see, she spent her whole life not getting rewarded with any recognition, like not getting any of the fruits of that labor that maybe a 3 would be looking for, in terms of she didn't get the suit. Like she put in all that work and she didn't get the suit, but she kept fighting. And I think that in those ways, I'm drawn away from the 3. Like, I don't see the showmanship. I don't see the kind of like schmoozing a crowd or like I see her running the meeting. I think of it maybe
differently. Like, I think like schmoozing a crowd can still be like impressing everyone in the meeting. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean anything big or flashy. I mean, like, does a 1 get that haircut? I don't know. I feel like there's no reason.
Like, that was a design choice. That was
no, it's to impress others. I mean, a 1 doesn't get that haircut.
I think a 1 exactly does get that haircut.
I think a 1. I don't know, guys. 1's out there. You let us know. I don't know. I just don't think. I think she's a 3. I do, but like I don't think we see a ton of evidence of it. But I think when we think back to the original Ant-Man, I just could picture her with her portfolios and walking into the meeting and dating Yellow Jacket. And I think
that's
like 3. Like, we don't get to see her in a ton of meetings. That is so
1 to me.
That is like, so
like Pepper Potts. Like, I think about Pepper Potts and how she is like a boss in the boardroom. She runs Stark Industries. She gets things done. We talked about like when you need to get stuff done, you go to the 1. Like, and I think you were the one who said like, okay, if a friend asks you, like, how do I differentiate between the 1 and the 3? You say, like, if you have a time crunch and a lot of things to do, will you do one thing as well as you can? Or will you do everything, like, kind of half as good just to get it all done? Like, I think she will give her all to one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can see that more than all the other pieces that you've given me.
Fair enough. I also, a word that really comes to mind to me when I think about 3s is charisma. And like, I love Hope, but I just don't think charisma is her number 1 skill. I don't think that she is interested in like gaining people's favor. Like, she knows what she's good at, and she's like, and she also has spent her whole life not being given like the attention that she rightfully deserves. But she's like, I'm still going to keep working and like proving to myself that I can do this.
Yeah, I think it could go like, I honestly think it could go either way. And I think the main reason I'll say, I don't know. What do you think her wing is? I can't really see it for either of them.
Yes, no, I would agree. I was doing I think actually I looked up an article on wings this afternoon because I was trying to think of her wing, and I was reading about how like different people, like, they lean on their wings to different extents. So I think that wherever she wings, she does not have like a strong wing. Like, and for me, obviously that's because I think that she sits really firmly in that type 1, but I had her written down as a 1 wing 9, mainly because, and I think we've talked about this with some characters in the past where you were like, oh, they have to be like maybe they have to be a 3 wing 4, because I just don't see any like wing 2 in them. I don't see a ton of like 2 in her. And so I was just like, oh, then she has to be a 9. That's not like a great argument. And it's not like, I'm not super committed to it, but that was where I landed.
Okay. I am okay with committing to the one, but I will say, like, you need to sharpen up your skills. I think you've been winning too easily lately, and I think you're just
Maybe.
like,
Maybe.
because I'm not like thoroughly convinced.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of need to be convinced of more.
This one is interesting, and maybe you're totally right. Like, listeners, write in, let us know. Like, let me know if I need to step up my game. I will 100% take that to heart. But for me, it's just like, oh, I just see it. You know, I think you've had that experience before where you're just like, this just makes so much sense to me. Like, I don't know how to put it into words because it just like it sits there and I'm just like, yes, like I see it. It's a puzzle piece fitting into place so perfectly that maybe I just like can't verbalize it as well as I should be able to, you know?
Exactly.
So maybe that's where I'm failing here.
Yes. Okay. I just like, I don't want, I'm like, should I just laugh it off and go along or do I fight? And you know what? This is where I'm not necessarily fair. I'm not super competitive, so I will move on. Which, we didn't even talk about competition. Maybe the fact that she's like competitive with Scott means she's a 3. I don't know. We'll put it to rest.
Well, let's just mosey on over to our last character. To Hank Pym, also known as Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man, and in the comics, he was actually he was the main creator of Ultron in the comics, and he was also one of the founding members of the Avengers, kind of how the movies have their original 6. He was one of the original Avengers, and he was Yellow Jacket at one point. So the main villain of the first Ant-Man movie, Hank, in the comics has been Yellow Jacket before.
Whoa, they messed with the plot a little bit on that one.
Yes, I think they did some light revisions when they brought him onto the screen. So, Murjanatu, tell me what you think Hank's number is.
Alrighty, I could be wrong. But I think I'm a very like science-y and very like, this is how it is and this is what you're gonna do. And like not super soft. And so I want to give, not that that's necessarily always a characteristic of a 5, but I do think he's a 5. So I thought specifically, and it's because it's a movie I've seen the most that he's featured in, of Endgame, and he like receives that package and he's like very like bossy, and which is not a 5 characteristic either, but just like he's like so engrossed in his work. And he's doing so much of this incredible work at the facility.
Hello.
Dr. Pym?
That would be the number that you called, yes?
This is Captain Stevens from shipping. We have a package for you.
Oh, bring it up.
Well, that's the thing, sir. We can't.
I'm confused. I thought that was your job.
Well, it's just... Sir, the box is glowing, and to be honest, some of our male guys aren't feeling that great.
They didn't open it, did they?
Yeah, they did. You better get down here.
Excuse me.
And I just think he's like, oh my gosh, the worst thing is happening ever. And like, I can't believe Scott Lang is going to be Ant-Man. Like, what am I doing? Like, he's super cynical, which is, again, not necessarily a 5. I just think sometimes 5s take the emotion out of things. And so I can see how he's that way. And I definitely seeing some like wing 6, like, the world's going to end. Like, he's just like a really cynical guy. And again, like none of the numbers are like optimistic or cynical. Like that's not necessarily the case. But I think I can kind of see that. But this is the one that I definitely was like, I'm really nervous about this one. I'm not really 100% sure. And I still want to say like a smart guy, he's a 5.
Right, totally. So, love that for you. I will say that I mentioned earlier, he was maybe the hardest for me to pin down, but all 3 of these characters I came in pretty confident on. I was still pretty confident on him, and I had him as a 5 wing 6.
Yay!
So I do completely agree with you. I was thinking a lot about, obviously he is one of our smarties, but also when we look at kind of his goal in the first Ant-Man movie, it's a lot about the protection of information. He he has created this thing, but then he realizes the dangers that it poses, which I think could be that little Wing 6 kind of reminding him of like, this is dangerous. And then he says, okay, then nobody should have this. And he's really mad when S.H.I.E.L.D. in the 80s is trying to recreate it. And he is like, no, I told you this is not safe and you went behind my back. This is not okay.
The Pym particle is a miracle, please. Don't let your past determine the future.
As long as I am alive, nobody will ever get that formula.
I think fives have that ability to really hold on to and value information and sometimes even keep it to themselves in a way that I think we see him then trying to protect the technology and protect the information of the Ant-Man suit from people like Darren Cross in the first Ant-Man movie. I also was thinking about how he deals with the loss of his wife, Janet, which I'm really sad that we're only doing 3 characters an episode, and this episode has already gone on for a good amount of time, so we don't have time for Janet today, but I do love Michelle Pfeiffer. And when he loses her, and Hope has a quote where she talks about after her mom died, he completely withdrew, and he shut himself off. He sent her to boarding school. And I think that we see fives a lot of times when they're in stress, they do withdraw. As you mentioned earlier, he's maybe not one of the softer or more emotional characters, and fives are right there in that thinking triad. They are very much in their heads. They are very logical, pragmatic. They are less guided by their emotions by other types. And I think that in such a high emotional place, like losing his wife, he kind of shuts himself away from those emotions, and he withdraws himself from the only other person who knows what he's going through, which is his daughter. And I think that is a really, really sad thing that both characters go through. But I do think that I see that as a tendency of a type 5 who may be going through a really hard time, who may kind of tend to just kind of draw away. And so, yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we see some of the really great things and some of the struggles of the type 5 in Hank throughout kind of his journey. And I think it's really beautiful the way that he does love his wife and doesn't give up hope then. After Scott returns from the quantum realm and he realizes there may be a chance, he is going to do everything he can to get her back. And I think that their relationship is really beautiful. And I love seeing him and Hope kind of restore their relationship as kind of the movies go on. But this is kind of how I thought the whole episode was going to go. I'm just like, yes, he's a 5-wing 6. I completely agree.
Wow. Okay.
Next question.
I'm good. I feel like I thought it was a 5-wing 6, and then you just made the argument for me, so it felt really nice.
See, I still sometimes can make a coherent argument, even if not for Hope. But whoops, that's a worry for another day.
Yes. Okay, well, this was a very interesting episode. I really enjoyed this.
Me too. This went basically nowhere I anticipated it to go, so I loved it.
Well, if you want more, you can follow us at Typecasting Pod on Twitter and on Instagram, or email us and honestly let us know about Hope. Like, should I have fought harder? At typecastingpod@gmail.com. And our website, of course, is typecastingpod.com.
And you can find Murjanatu and I on the internet. Find Murjanatu on Twitter at Murjana, the number 2, the actual digit 2, _. And on Instagram at Murjana and the number 2, no _. And you can find me, get in touch at lucasgraydon.com. Thank you so much for this week, Murjanatu. I had a great time discussing these characters. Thank you, listeners, for listening. And I'm so excited for next week when we get to take on some of the best sidekicks of the MCU by the numbers.
Our favorite are having a spoiler-filled discussion of the best fictional characters. Ooh, okay. Well, I was going to say, we see 2 very different... Lucas, stop.
I'm sorry, you just really caught me off guard. Okay. Okay, you go.
Mock.
He's a felon, right? I think.
I
Sorry,
don't really know the difference between a felon and a criminal.
Yeah, I know. Criminal justice system.
And our website, of course, is Typecasting. Our website, of course, is
Typecasting Pod.
Bye. I never know
Perfect.
how to end because I feel like it's like not over when you say that, but it is.